One late night in the spring of 1997, a woman named Kim from the city of Monroe, North Carolina, was driving home along a lonely highway. At some point, she attempted to overtake another car but accidentally blinded the driver and his passenger with her high beams. However, as often happens on the road, the driver became angry and began aggressively chasing her, honking and demanding that she pull over. Naturally, this frightened Kim greatly. Fortunately, within just a few seconds, she came across a police patrol car parked by the roadside. Pulling over next to it, she felt safe and the aggressive driver drove on. 2 weeks later, Kim was once again returning home along the same road. She was exhausted but happy that her shift had ended at the nightclub where she worked as a waitress. She looked forward to seeing her husband, Bridger, with whom she had spoken on the phone just minutes earlier. They often called each other during their drive home after work, little check-ins to make sure neither was in trouble on these lonely roads. That night, however, that routine call would be the last time Bridger heard Kim's voice. What happened to Kim that night would become one of the darkest chapters in the city's history. Welcome to Unexpected Twists. Here, even the most seemingly simple story is worth a top-tier Hollywood adaptation, so stick around till the end and subscribe. Kim and Bridger lived on a small farm just outside Monroe, where they kept a few horses on land they had purchased after years of hard work and saving. It was a dream for them. Kim, an avid animal lover, had set her sights on owning her own horse farm ever since she was a child. Bridger, who worked as a DJ, supported her wholeheartedly. He had grown up surrounded by farmland. His extended family were farmers, so the idea of building a horse farm alongside his wife not only made sense, it felt downright natural. Fridays and Saturdays were always the busiest times for them. Kim usually worked nights at Charlotte nightclub, serving drinks and chatting with patrons, while Bridger had late-night gigs playing music at various events. Their schedules matched in an odd way. Both were night owls by necessity, often leaving home in the afternoon and returning well after midnight. Over time, they settled into a routine of phone calls during their drive home. Whenever one finished work first, they would call the other, for company and for reassurance in those murky, early morning hours. That Friday, March 28th, began like many others. Bridger had a DJ gig at a school event a couple of hours away, and Kim went to her job at the nightclub. Throughout the evening, each was busy with their separate responsibilities. Bridger wrapped up a bit after 2 a.m. and started the long drive home, while Kim got off around the same time but had a shorter route. By about 2:30 a.m., both were on their way back to Monroe. He called her from the road, then again as soon as he arrived home. During their last call, Kim told him she was also close to home, estimating she'd be inside within 15 minutes at most. Then the line went dead, with both expecting to see each other face to face very soon. Minutes stretched into an hour, and Kim did not show up. Bridger felt a twinge of worry, but told himself that maybe she had decided to stop for gas or was delayed by a small errand. As more time passed, that worry ballooned into dread. By around 3:45 a.m., he began calling her in near panic, hoping to hear her voice, but received no response. At that same moment, Monroe police started receiving calls from passing drivers about a suspicious-looking Jeep on the side of the highway. Its headlights were on, the engine idling, and the front window partially rolled down. There was no one behind the wheel. For an abandoned vehicle, it looked strangely untouched. The hood was neither dented nor damaged, with no sign of a crash, yet the driver had vanished. Responding officers ran the plates and discovered the Jeep belonged to Kim. Almost instantly, one officer noted that the phone on the passenger seat was ringing. The caller ID showed Bridger, so an officer answered and heard a panicked man demanding to know where his wife was. On hearing that the car was empty with its engine running, Bridger's alarm exploded into full-blown terror. He said he would be there right away. When he arrived and saw Kim's Jeep, its headlights still illuminating the night, a knot twisted in his stomach. Inside the car, everything was basically intact. Kim's purse lay on the seat, open, but with cash, cards, and other personal items untouched. The only thing missing was her driver's license. Her phone, which the officer had just answered, still had battery power. The driver's door stood slightly ajar, as if someone had stepped out expecting to get back in within seconds. None of this made any sense. If it had been a robbery, why would valuables remain? If she had left on foot, wouldn't she have taken her phone or closed the door? Police immediately began searching the area. They scoured ditches and adjacent fields with flashlights, calling Kim's name, hoping she might have wandered off in distress or been involved in an accident nearby. But the night swallowed their voices. By dawn, with no signs of Kim, the search intensified. Local volunteers rallied around Bridger and Kim's family, combing backroads, farmland, and wooded patches in the rural outskirts of Monroe. With every passing hour, the sense of dread escalated. Memory of a previous incident came flooding back. Just 2 weeks earlier, Kim had been driving home from another late shift when she found herself followed by a car with 2 men inside. She had inadvertently blinded them with her high beams while trying to overtake, and their reaction was furious. They rode her bumper, flashing headlights and honking as if urging her to pull over. Kim was terrified, especially because the road was deserted at that hour. Miraculously, she spotted a police patrol car parked on the roadside and pulled up next to it. The tailing car, seeing the police, sped away. She was so shaken that she gave details to the officers on duty, a father and son duo, Roger and Josh Griffin, explaining how scared she was and how frequently she had to travel that lonely stretch of highway. That earlier close call lingered in Kim's mind. It made her extra cautious when driving at night. Bridger suspected it also stayed in the minds of those 2 unknown men who had chased her. When Kim disappeared, Bridger told detectives about the incident, strongly hinting that maybe those same men had returned, perhaps finding her again on the highway and decided to torment her once more, this time with tragic results. Detectives followed that lead, sifting through police files. Indeed, they located the father and son officer's official report detailing Kim's fear and the men she described. They were able to track down those individuals, but the men had solid alibis. The lead fizzled out. Time marched forward. By March 30th, nearly 40 hours after Kim had vanished, the search stretched on. Then 2 local volunteers, poking around a seldom-used dead-end road about 2 miles from where the Jeep had been found, made a grim discovery. Tucked behind scattered trash and debris lay a body. One of the volunteers caught a flash of red hair and realized with horror that it was Kim. The news spread through Monroe in a heartbeat. The missing woman was no longer missing. She had been murdered. From the state of her body, it appeared Kim had endured a vicious assault. Her neck and spine were broken, and bruises across her arms suggested she might have been restrained. Yet robbery clearly wasn't the motive. Her watch, wedding band, and other valuables were still on her. There was no sign of sexual assault either. Each new detail deepened the mystery. Why would anyone abduct a young woman, not to steal anything, not assault her sexually, yet kill her so brutally? With a homicide on their hands, the Monroe Police Department called in the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation for additional help. Detectives started close to home, verifying whether Bridger might have had any hidden reason to harm Kim. They discovered one officer who claimed to have seen Bridger's car heading in the same direction as Kim's Jeep around the time of her disappearance. But Bridger's phone records and even camera footage from the heart of Monroe confirmed his story. He arrived home from his DJ gig around 2:30 a.m., spoke to Kim on the phone, dozed off, then set out to find her only after 4 a.m. That timeline matched when the police discovered her abandoned Jeep. Bridger was no longer a suspect. Sensing they were missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, detectives pored over the details at the crime scene. Kim's body was found in a position suggesting she might have jumped or fallen from a vehicle. Her injuries, including a broken neck, pointed to a severe impact. What truly raised eyebrows were the faint abrasions around her wrists, as if handcuffs or zip ties had been used. Something else stood out. Partial footprints on the back of her sweater, as if someone had stepped on her while she was on the ground. Those prints were subtle, a pattern of ridges forming a shape reminiscent of the letter V. This clue might never have been noticed if a forensic specialist named Ricky Navarro had not examined the fabric meticulously under the right lighting. That small detail would be the crack that allowed investigators to peer into a darker truth. Navarro took the pattern and compared it to known footwear used in law enforcement. He discovered these prints were consistent with a brand commonly issued to police officers in Monroe. Boots known for a specific traction design. The brand was different from typical retail boots, and local data showed that roughly 150 officers in the department wore standard issue footwear of that style. The next step was to determine the size of the impression, and after careful analysis of the spacing and ridges, Navarro narrowed it down to 3 possible shoe sizes. That drastically reduced the pool of officers who could have left those footprints. One by one, these possibilities were systematically investigated. Among them, 2 officers were quickly eliminated. One had an ironclad alibi, out of town, and the other, well, his whereabouts were confirmed by dispatch logs. That left Officer Josh Griffin. A familiar name, isn't it? The father and son pair from Kim's near miss 2 weeks earlier came back into focus. Josh Griffin had only been with the Monroe Police Department for about a year, but in that short time he had gained a reputation for pulling over young women under questionable pretexts. Ostensibly to check if they were all right, but seemingly just to flirt. Some of his co-workers described him as cocky, a man who believed his badge gave him the power to do whatever he wanted. Suddenly, recollections from the earlier incident took on a different light. Kim had felt relieved when she approached Josh and his father that night because they seemed to protect her. But if Josh had harbored more interest in her than merely offering help, might he have tried to see her again? She had shared personal details, including the route she used to get home. The idea that an officer used this information to lure Kim into a false sense of security was both terrifying and heartbreakingly plausible. At first, Josh denied everything. He claimed he had finished his shift shortly before midnight on March 28th, gone home, and spent the rest of the night in bed. But he couldn't produce anyone who had seen him there. Further digging revealed that he was known to linger in his patrol car while off-duty, presumably hunting for minor traffic violators or, as some believed, interesting women to approach. Additional witnesses stepped forward saying they had seen his patrol car near the highway later than the time he claimed to be off. The suspicious time gap between 2:30 and 4:30 a.m. matched precisely when Kim vanished. Police obtained a warrant to search Griffin's personal vehicle as well as the patrol car typically assigned to him. Though they discovered no outright smoking gun, the squad car smelled faintly of a strong cleaning solution. According to co-workers, Griffin rarely cleaned his vehicle so thoroughly. If there had been any trace evidence, fibers from Kim's clothing, for example, it was likely destroyed. Investigators also found that Griffin had recently disposed of his department-issue boots, claiming they had been ruined by chemicals at a supposed traffic accident scene. There was no report of such an incident. The attempt to cover his tracks felt too blatant to dismiss as mere coincidence. The more investigators pressed, the more Griffin's narrative changed. He eventually admitted that he had indeed encountered Kim in the early hours of March 29th, but insisted he had merely checked on her because she appeared to be swerving, then let her go. When asked why he had taken her driver's license or why her Jeep was left running by the side of the road, he gave no coherent answer. Confronted with the footprints on Kim's clothing, prints that matched his shoe size, he claimed that he had never set foot on her. The holes in his story were glaring. In May 1997, 2 months after Kim's death, the pieces were deemed sufficient for an arrest, and Josh Griffin was charged with first-degree kidnapping and murder. The shocking reality that a police officer could commit such a crime rattled the entire town. The trial commenced early in 1998. Prosecutors alleged that Josh, obsessed with Kim since their first meeting, had used his knowledge of her nightly routine to wait for her. When she passed by at around 2:30 a.m., he flicked on his cruiser lights, pulled her over, and ordered her to step out of the Jeep. Trusting the badge, especially because she had no reason to suspect an officer she'd met before, Kim complied. The fatal turn likely came when she realized there was no legitimate reason for the stop. Investigators believed that Josh made inappropriate advances, possibly trying to coerce her into his patrol car. Kim, outraged and frightened, tried to escape. At that point, he may have restrained her with handcuffs. The evidence suggested that she managed to break free at some point but was caught, beaten, and strangled, her neck broken in the struggle. Josh then disposed of her body on the deserted road, rushed back to the Jeep, and left it running to make it look as though she had simply vanished. Defense attorneys pointed out that the direct evidence was thin. Much was circumstantial. The footprints, the missing license, the phone calls, the incomplete forensic traces in Griffin's car, but the jury listened to a parade of witnesses, people who had seen him pulling over women for no legitimate reason, night shift workers who spotted his car near the site, and forensic specialists testifying about how the partial footprint on Kim's sweater matched the brand Griffin wore. The mosaic of events painted a story too compelling to dismiss. After a short deliberation, the jury convicted John Griffin of first-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict sent shockwaves through Monroe. An officer sworn to protect the public had violated his oath in the worst possible way. Kim's grieving husband, Bridger, sat quietly in the courtroom as the judge handed down the sentence. Though he was relieved that the killer was off the streets, it was a hollow victory. His wife was never coming back. In a final chilling twist, Josh Griffin confessed 3 years later. He recounted how ever since Kim had sought help from him and his father that night when she was chased by 2 men, he'd not been able to get her out of his mind. She was friendly and grateful, and he misread her politeness for something more. Using his position, Griffin learned the details of her routine. When an opportunity arose, him working a late shift and Kim traveling alone at night, he exploited it. He admitted he intended to spend time with her, using his authority to trap her, but she refused to cooperate. After she tried to get away, he lost control and committed a crime that no uniform could excuse. In the wake of the trial, Monroe's police department instituted changes designed to prevent one individual from wielding so much unchecked power. Among these were stricter rules on documenting traffic stops and new protocols for any off-duty officers who engaged with the public. The father, Roger Griffin, who had once been known as a decent cop, resigned in shame soon after, unable to cope with the idea that his own flesh and blood had used the same badge to hurt someone instead of helping. He relocated as well, vanishing from Monroe's day-to-day life just as quietly as he had once patrolled its streets. If you enjoy such cases with unexpected twists, check out the channel. There you're going to find many great stories. If you like what you see, please subscribe. I'd be very grateful. I'll catch you next time.